Hey everybody, it's Albert, and recently I've been doing some research. I'm putting together a book on King James Onlyism, dealing with various disputed texts, and I've been researching the Johanneum, trying to get the sort of other point of view, trying to hitting. I have a whole collection of King James only books, and searching various websites for new arguments I haven't heard before. And the curious thing I came across that I just was unfamiliar with, and it sort of led to a little investigation because it was common knowledge basically for a long time that the Johanneum only appears in 9 manuscripts. In 4 of those, it's merely a gloss to a margin note on the side. Not actually in the text. The other 5, it's in the text, but all of those, with the exception of 1, are after Erasmus, or after it's the 16th century and onwards, so it's obviously in reaction to the controversy arising from Erasmus's early editions, because until that point you don't see any, with one exception, I'll mention that, there was one Greek manuscript that actually had the Johanneum, but it didn't look the same as the Johanneum as we know it. It was obviously a different translation of the Greek, and the obvious reason was this manuscript was a diaglot, which means that it was Greek and Latin together. And the person translating it, who was obviously in the Latin West, looked at this and said, "Oh, this Greek manuscript that he was copying from didn't have it, so he translated it and inserted it," because it doesn't look the same as even though it's another way of translating it, it's obviously an off-the-cuff translation because he thought it was missing because it was in the Vulgate. Of course, the Vulgate back then was, for the Western Church, was what really counted. So he inserted it in the Greek text. And that's the obvious reason for that. Now, the later ones, the later cut where it's in the text that have more the form that we're familiar with, it's around the time of Erasmus and afterwards. So at that point, it becomes a major issue. It had become a focused issue, and then you see it being inserted into Greek texts. So that's pretty much where you get it in the Greek text. And this sort of has led to all kinds of weird accusations. For example, particularly with someone named D.A. Waite, who's one of the noted King James Onlyist authors. In fact, a lot of King James Onlyists sort of look to him as their major scholar, which tells you something right away. Because frankly, when you're comparing him to someone like Kurt Aland or Bruce Metzger, who've actually been going through went through those manuscripts for like decades, Waite obviously has never really done that. He's merely just searching for any reason to latch on to saying the King James version is right, no matter what the source or how reliable. He's never, and what I'm going to discuss today makes it obvious he hasn't done his research, because I came across this and I'm like, where is this coming from? Because I've seen on a number of King James only websites saying D.A. Waite has discovered that there are actually 20 manuscripts with now generally they don't list these manuscripts. They don't give a list of them, so you don't know how early, when they are, what manuscripts they are. They just say there's 20 of them. Well, that's kind of an interesting thing, don't you think? And you think now, by the way, the total has always been 9. Recently, a 10th was discovered by Daniel Wallace. It turns out it's like a 12th century manuscript, but the addition to it was put in, and again, it is a margin note. It's not in the text itself. It's in a margin note that was added sometime in the 16th or 17th century. So that again, and as with all the other ones that are margin notes, by the way, they're added later. They're added like in the beginning around the time of Erasmus. You see suddenly all these manuscripts getting changed to put the Johanneum in, either as a margin note or the newer ones in the text themselves, which are all from that period. So that's, now, of course, Waite is accused, like Metzger didn't list all the manuscripts. Well, Metzger was only concerned with those that occurred, the earliest ones that would have occurred before Erasmus, or around the time of Erasmus, and he meant in Metzger, like the ones in the 17th and 18th century, Metzger thought were irrelevant, so he didn't list them. And he mentioned someone else only used one. Well, he only used one because he said he only went with the one in the text before Erasmus, the time of Erasmus, which would have been the one I mentioned, where it was obviously translated as part of a diglot. So but then Waite goes on to say his. At least the argument is that there's these 20 manuscripts. Now, I just go, like, where are they getting this? Because I had not even heard it. I didn't even see it now I may have missed it. I have this one book by Waite, Defending the King James Bible, but I didn't find it now I may have missed it. It may be in there. I just didn't pick it up, but I didn't know where they were getting this from. So I did some research and found out it actually comes from the Dean Burgon News or something. Waite's leader of the Dean Burgon Society, and they had this little publication, the Dean Burgon News, and the May 1979 edition shows you how long some of this stuff has been kicking around. These sort of crackpot ideas have been kicking around. Lists. Well, let me. I'll put a link to this in the sidebar. It's a PDF file. You can open it yourself. But I'm gonna read this for you. It states, it begins on page 1. There's an article about, it's stating the most frequent questions we've been asked, and it's talking about 157, and it says, talks about the research of DBS, Dean Burgon Society member, the Reverend C.J. Drexler, one of my good friends who lives in Runnymede, New Jersey, is Pastor C.J. Drexler. He has a vast library of manuscripts, books, Bible, etc., etc. And it goes on to say, talking about about this, Drexler has found the following numbered Greek manuscripts which do contain 1 John 5:7, and he lists, and he says instead of being the few, it's actually 20. And the numbers he gives are 34, 61, 88, 99, 105, 110, 162, 173, 181, 190, 193, 219, 220, 221, 298, 429, 629, 635, 636, and 918. Now, what's curious about that? What I'm curious, I've never heard any of this before. So I said, well, let's check some of this out. I mean, I want to go on record. I want to have the facts, not, and the fact is, when you're dealing with the Dean Burgon Society, you really got to double check everything, because there's 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, it's bogus. And as is the case here, because in fact, and it took me a while to figure out exactly what happened. But first of all, when I started looking at these, the first one I looked at was manuscript 34. So I look up manuscript 34. It just contains the Gospels. It doesn't have 1 John in it. So I'm trying to give benefit of the doubt. Maybe that was a typo. Now, we knew about 61, so I then went to 80. 61 is one of the ones that everyone knows about. So I then went to manuscript 88. And when I went to manuscript 88, I found, lo and behold, that 88 only contained Acts, Paul, and Revelation. And then, so again, there's no 1 John in that. Johanneum isn't 1 John. There's no 1 John in that manuscript. So then I went to 99. Went to manuscript 99. And manuscript 99 is merely a fragment of the Gospel of Matthew. And not that much of it. So on and on, again and again, I'm looking up, and these manuscripts they don't have 1 John. These manuscripts are listing. So I'm like, what is going on here? Are they just, picking out random numbers? So I did a search trying to figure out, see if anyone has ever commented on this, because I figured if this accusation had gotten around, someone must have commented on it. What it turns out, and this just goes to show you what you're dealing with these people. And the level of, or the lack of sophistication in terms of the, see what happens with a lot of these people is they're overly reliant on books from over a century ago. The books by Dean Burgon and Scrivener, who were these 19th century, of course, they come way before any of the discoveries of the 20th century, all these major manuscript discoveries, like the Beatty Papyri and all that. They don't know anything about that. A lot of the major discoveries of the last century or so, they're before all of this. So when they're arguing against the Alexandrian text, they think the Alexandrian text is just Aleph and B, because that's all they know about. See, they don't know all the other stuff they found. So in all fairness, I'm trying to be fair to Dean Burgon. There's no way he would have known about a lot of the stuff we know now. So, the same for Scrivener. But what's interesting is that what these guys don't realize is in the early days of the manuscripts, everybody had their own numbering system. The Scrivener had his numbering system. Tischendorf had his numbering system, etc. Like von Soden, he had his. You had all these different numbers. They were not the same. So and the one that they usually refer to now is what's called the Gregory Allen numbering system. And Allen being, of course, Kurt Allen. But what ends up happening is these guys are referring to the same manuscript 2, 3, 4 different times. They don't realize it because they think there's only one numbering system. Because, of course, the Gregory Allen numbering system didn't predate Kurt Allen, which is like, so if they're looking at a book over 100 years ago, that numbering system didn't exist yet, the one that we're using now. So these guys are actually listing the same exact manuscripts 3, 4 times. What I'll do is I'll give a link to the Dean Burgon thing so you can see this list, and you can look up. I'll also give a list. You can look up actually on Wikipedia. They give a list of New Testament Minuscules, and you'll see it's a reliable list. It's taken right out of the Nestle Allen text. So you'll see the chart there, what it contains, and the numbers they're listing obviously don't correspond to what's there, and it just shows you these people really don't have any clue what they're talking about. But as you start digging through the stuff, it just gets more and more absurd. Thank you very much for your time.